Is this new? Oh, dude. All right, we're early. We're so early. This was posted an hour ago. Today was not to be what today is. Yesterday, someone in my comment section directed me to a channel Diane has that focuses on her van life, car camping, and a couple of times in the titles calling herself unhoused. In the videos we watched there, she does a good job of separating her other channels. You will not know that they exist. You just won't. You'll find her in one channel and think that's the only one she has, when we have found at least 3. We were in the middle of that when Diane posted an estrangement video. Today, set yourself free from the pain of parental estrangement. If you've not seen a Diane video here before, Diane is a parent who did a terrible job of being one who now has 2 estranged children and cannot seem to make it her own fault. But we do. We make it her fault here, because it is. 14-minute video, so strap in.
How to set yourself free after estrangement. Radical acceptance. Set yourself free. Many of the ideas in this video were inspired by a book by Tara Brach called Radical Acceptance, Embracing Your Life with the Heart of a Buddha.
How many of us actually think she read the book in its entirety and did not just garner like random points, or did not just like read the titles of chapters? I cannot trust Diane to read a book. I can't. The one time she mentions like the act of reading, she was like, it required too much contrition, so I didn't read it. Besides that, she mentions books, but never mentions the act of.
Breaking the trance of unworthiness. We cause our own suffering through relentless self-judgment. We're imprisoned by our own shiz talker.
Again, I hate that.
This incessant negative self-talk makes us feel separate, but we are not.
I do think there's a lot of merit in learning how to not speak to yourself negatively. Because when you speak to yourself negatively, 1, you're not helping yourself. 2nd, like it does affect you. It affects you negatively. Surprise. However, I don't think you should absolve yourself of criticism, even when it comes from yourself, especially when it comes from yourself. So the argument here is, if I am a bad mother whose children have estranged from her, those children, at least one of, has given me a list of reasons why. Should I silence a voice in my head that says, oh, maybe you were a bad mom? No, you shouldn't. That is criticism. That's not just a negative voice. That is criticism you should listen to. Why did this happen? Can I change it? Can I do anything about it?
We feel disconnected from everything and everyone around us, but we are not. We are part of the seat we sit on, the air we breathe. We live in a culture that breeds separation, especially if we grew up without a cohesive sense of family, community, or tribe.
She says we live in a culture that breeds individuality and the separation, especially if you don't grow up with like this familial structure. As a parent, it is your job to provide the life you want your kid to live in. And if you want your child to be family oriented, you have to provide a family that they enjoy, that they feel like they're a part of. When you are the reason that they no longer feel comfortable within your family, you can't blame anything other than yourself for the reason your children don't want to be a part of your family. Now, that doesn't mean they don't want a family. One of your children now lives in a monastery with people who accept her. Do you see how that works? Do you see how you pushed someone away and they didn't become this like sad individual looking for, they actually did look for community, but that's where we end up. They found community because they couldn't find it within your family, the family that you are in charge of.
We feel like outsiders, disconnected, and on our own. We learn that any affiliation requires that we prove ourselves to others. You have the power.
Not true. Not true. Not true. And what I want to do now that we have a lot more context of who her daughter Sydney is use her as an example. Sorry, that's going to suck to her, but this is where we are. Her daughter did not go off and fear the idea of community or family. She did the opposite. She went to go look for it. She joined a monastery where every day they wake up and they worship together. They eat together. They do everything together because she so desperately just needed a family. She needed parents who were good parents. I've said this a few times before. I would have no issue with her being like, this is the experience I went through. You should do this because I did the opposite and it went wrong for me. But that's not what she does. She gets up here and she says, this is what you should do. Like she did any of it. She didn't. And it's this. Before you listen to the things that people say, you should try and figure out who it is saying these things. I don't know that I trust a bad parent to give me good advice when that advice is not based in their acknowledgement of their mistakes. And that's all that is. There's a big difference between preaching and going, oh, I did this wrong. Be careful. Don't do it.
Power to break the trance of unworthiness. So Mohini was the caged tiger at the Washington, D.C. Zoo many years ago. And for a long time, she lived in a 12 by 12 cage because that's just how zoos were built back then. But at one point, they decided to build her a bigger habitat because that was kinder to the animals. And they built her this big, beautiful habitat.
She's just going to stay in the 12 by 12.
And the story goes that they let her into it, all excited about how she would run and roam and climb in the trees and lay in the grass. But all she ever did was she stayed in her 12 by 12 corner where the feedings happened. And she never moved out of it. Mohini literally was living in her own cage of fear. And this is what the trance of unworthiness does to us.
I don't know that fear is the right word there. Unless the tiger was afraid of like all the things that were now in the enclosure. I think I'm skipping the point. I think the point is that Diane is looking for any reason to consider herself the victim without saying it's her anymore. She wants to make this universal and she wants to give you a reason to like watch these videos and say, oh, Diane, you're so smart, but she's not.
We are living in our own cage of fear, and all we have to do is to step out of it. It is a mental construct. It is not a real barrier.
I don't see the connection between saying that you're in a mental barrier and being an estranged parent. What are you afraid of? I guess. Like, I don't see it. I don't know what she's getting at. And usually it's pretty easy to tell Diane, but I don't know where she's going.
All she had to do was step off the pavement, but her habits kept her caged. So what would life be like if I could accept this moment exactly as it is? Forget trying to vanquish emotion or rid yourself of impurities. Rather, embrace life with all its realities, broken, messy, and vibrantly alive. Acknowledge that.
Accept that your children think you're a bad parent. And then say it is what it is. It's probably just like an easier way to summarize what she just said. No, I think you're right, Bach. I don't think any of us understand the tiger like you do. But really, like, I don't think that metaphor works. I don't think that metaphor works at all for what she's trying to make it be. Again, as an estranged parent, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of letting go? Because that's entirely different than being afraid of the exploration. I guess, are you afraid of like exploring life without your children? It would make sense if within this context, she wasn't the reason the kids are gone. It would make sense in death, right? I think it would make sense if you lost your children to something that was entirely not your fault. And now you're afraid of going outside and living life without them. That would make a lot of sense to me. She speaks of her kids. She speaks of her kids like they are dead in a very gross way because they're not. That just feels wrong to accept life without your children in a way that makes it sound like they died because you were a bad parent. I hope I'm missing something, but I don't think Diane is that deep.
The dreams you had. Sometimes on the way to a dream, you get lost and you find a better one. So here are 6 tips to help you. Number 1, begin by clearly identifying the dreams you once held dear and are now lost. Acknowledge their existence and their importance in your life. Number 2, allow yourself to grieve your dreams. Understand that it is natural and healthy to grieve the loss of your dreams.
She treats this channel like it's a self-help audiobook rather than what she intended it to be, which is a place for her to share her stories and seem empathetic. The last few videos have been her being like, here's what you need to do. Here's what you should do. Without the context of, I didn't do these things. I regret not doing these things. I could have been better. Here's my story. Here's what I think could have happened if I did these things. Here's what I did instead and why you shouldn't do that. And without context, it's really, it's all it is. It's a self-help book that's being like, write down your dreams. And then it's 40 blank pages. One of my biggest issues with the way a lot of us make content is how little of it is personalized. If we speak about it in like the Nuzlocking space and the Pokemon space, and this is the part that's not going to make it into the video because we're talking about Pokemon now. There's a lot of people who do a lot of very similar Pokemon runs in a very similar way. And if I just showed you the run without like an overlay, you probably wouldn't know who it was. And then there are people who make videos where when you see the video immediately you're like, oh, this is Jan, this is Small Ant, this is whoever, right? She has fallen back from trying to create content that is specific to her experience for other people to creating content that may be universal in helping people that are not in her situation. Her situation is not one of, I am an estranged parent who did her best, tried her best, and is now learning to move on. She is someone who was the problem, is the problem, refuses to acknowledge the problem, and is ignoring it actively, and is now trying to teach people to be someone who she wasn't while pretending it is who she is. And it's a lot of advice she won't follow. And that is the main problem. You should probably not trust people who are so willing to hand out advice they don't want to follow.
Allow yourself to experience the full range of emotions associated with this loss. Number 3, reflect on the significance of these dreams. Consider what these dreams meant to you and why their loss is impactful. Reflect without judgment to create space for acceptance and healing.
If she could get herself to say, reflect without judgment to make space for healing. There was another word in there I missed. If she could get herself to say that and then say how that applies to her, it would be entirely different than her just handing out advice. And I think that's how things work, right? You define something, you give it significance, and then you move on. She's handing out a list without doing a job of why these things are important or what they may look like. You should be able to reflect on your actions in a way that is objective, in the same way that a therapist might. Also, a good reason to go to therapy. Go to therapy. But that shouldn't come with you absolving yourself of guilt. Because in this situation, are you able to reflect without judging yourself in a way that is accurate? Can you say these are the things that happened without saying they were your fault, without lying? Because I think the fact that a lot of these things were her fault are what makes them things you need to reflect on. And so to take out that entire chunk of context feels like you're lying to yourself to make yourself feel better. If that's what you need to do, if this is a private thing for you, if you really, really, really need to pretend it wasn't your fault to make yourself feel better and live your life, okay. Who am I to say anything? But when you put it on the internet and you set up a platform for other people to do the same thing and you do it publicly, that's the problem. No one cares if you're a bad person in private. No one cares if you have terrible thoughts in private. No one cares if you go into your closet and just like start saying the N-word to nobody. Really weird thing to do, but it doesn't affect anyone. The problem is when you get on the internet and you start spouting these dumb ideas, and then you give other people the idea that it's okay to be this person. Somebody told me I need to script my content. That's entirely like, that's a whole different side of the internet. Could I write an essay on Diane? Absolutely. Would it be good? I think it would. Do I want to do that? Do I want to sit here alone and watch Diane? No. Oh no. That would be so bad. Yeah, I'm not trying to just hang out with Diane, dude.
Number 4, seek lessons within the loss. Every loss carries with it opportunities for learning and growth. Try to identify any lessons or insights that you can glean from having to let go. And number 5, visualize new possibilities. As you begin to let go of old dreams, make space for new ones. Accept your lack of control.
Again, this is all super inspecific, and all you have to do is be like, this is how it relates, this is how it works, this is what happened to me, this is what I did, this is whatever, this is whatever, this is whatever, this is whatever. Instead, you're going, you can't control it, let it go, which would have been great advice for yourself when your daughter asked you not to contact her. And if you could add that tidbit, lack of control. You need to learn to let things go when they are not within your control and there has been a boundary set. Like, I didn't do, like, if you could just add that, like, you should be able to do this, I wasn't able to do this, I regret it. If you could add that, that is so entirely different than just preaching and just being like, do this. This is the right way to do things. If you could just include the context of, I messed up, here's how you should do it the right way, the way I wish I did it. She's just like not a person anymore.
Don't waste time and energy fighting where you are. Invest it into getting to where you want to go. So here are some tips for doing that. Number 1, embrace the natural flow of relationships. The Tao Te Ching emphasizes living in harmony with the natural order of the universe.
The YouTube people are not going to have context for this. We just watched a video where she and her husband, Ted, a year ago, probably a little over, go hiking with their youngest daughter, Sydney. And she and Ted are together. Diane and Ted are together in like 3 different parts of the video, and they fight in all of them. And so embracing the natural way your relationships go when you and your husband fight anytime you're in the same room. Where do you think that's going? I feel like I know where that should be going.
In relationships, this means accepting that they will evolve and change. Embracing this natural flow can lead to greater inner peace. Number 2, cultivate detachment. According to Taoist philosophy, undue attachment leads to suffering, and I can attest that this is true. Accept that your child is autonomous and will make choices beyond your influence. And in practicing detachment, you acknowledge your feelings, but you do not let them control you. Number 3, practice.
These are all just topics she's not providing any significance to. I could do this too. I can get on Wikipedia and just be like, top 10 things to do. Or Google. I can get on Google and be like, top 10 things to do when your kid leaves you, and just read off bullet points. But they mean nothing if you can't apply them to something. These are things that like you have experience with, right? Talk about that. Talk about how you were not able to do these things and why you think you weren't able to. And then speak about what you wish you had done. If you could provide some sort of context and a place for parents to grow, that would be great. It's still Diane, who still has a lot of terrible ideas, who has been very openly racist and transphobic in the past. But it's the same thing we talked about 2 hours ago. Sometimes dumb people repeat good ideas.
Practice Wu Wei in interactions. So Wu Wei, or non-action, suggests that we achieve more when we stop trying to force things. In relationships, this means stepping back and allowing them to unfold with trust. Number 4.
I will say that you should take more of a responsibility on how your relationship with your children unfolds than to say like a romantic relationship. Within romantic relationships where you're two people trying to form a family, you should let them tell you who they are. And you should let their actions happen in front of you. That way you know whether or not you're compatible. When you're raising a kid, you have to give them guidance. You have to be able to say, hey, this is right, this is wrong. And even when they go out and make their own actions, you have to be able to provide a place for them to come back to. There's a lot of parts of the relationship you have with your child that you should be setting up. You should set your child up for success and allow them to make their decisions from there. You shouldn't be an absent parent and hope that your kid turns into someone you would hang out with. Which isn't what she's saying, but it feels like what she's saying.
Seek inner tranquility. Focus on what you can control, such as your own healing and well-being. By focusing on your inner tranquility, you can better accept things as they are. And number 5, embrace simplicity with sincerity. So simplifying your expectations in relationships can help in accepting your lack of control. Approaching interactions with sincerity helps you let go of manipulative and controlling behaviors. And relinquishing control does not mean giving up hope. It's just redirecting your energy to good. Acknowledge the plight of the innocents.
That's going to make me so mad. I don't even wonder where this is going, dude. I had something entirely different to say, and then I saw this, so I'm just going to let it play.
Good. Acknowledge the plight of the innocents. Sometimes bad things happen to good people to make them better people.
Do you think that's you? Say that about your daughter. Because your daughter seems very sweet. Sometimes good people have bad parents. And I hope it doesn't ruin them. I cut out a lot of the silence for YouTube, but I could just sit here for a few minutes and just... Diane, bad things happen to good people. This doesn't apply to you, dude.
So realize through this process that your family may suffer. Life can be random and unpredictable, as are the relationship dynamics within families. Siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, they may all be affected. Generational forces may be at play. Estrangement can stem from deep historical patterns and behaviors passed through generations, regardless of the inherent goodness or badness of any one individual.
We're adding context when she has it. The context we're adding is the person saying these things. And I think that's fair. I think if people stumble across these videos first, that sucks. Because without any sort of context, without knowing who Diane is, this is just a self-help book. This is a way to live your life after an estrangement, whether it was your fault or not. But we know it was her fault. We know she's a bad person and presumably a terrible mother. And I can't look past that. So when she says, come do these things I didn't do, it's disgusting. Bad things happening to good people does not apply to you. Does not apply to Diane. Diane is a bad person.
Not your estrangement. The occurrence of estrangement.
Okay, woman, take your own advice. Your entire life revolves around making these videos.
Estrangement does not negate a parent's goodness or worth. All human relationships are subject to flaws, misunderstandings, and failures. There are complex interactions of cause and effect happening here, and good people may experience negative events due to many interconnected causes that are not directly related to their goodness. We live in a yin-yang world. Yin is traditionally characterized as negative, passive, and feminine. Yang is portrayed as positive, active, and masculine.
Again, she needs to stop. She needs to stop treating her estrangement, her relationship with her daughter she was supposed to raise, like it was 50-50. It is not. It is your job to be a parent. It is your job to be a parent. It was your job to be a parent. It was your job to be a parent. They
are opposing but symbiotic light-dark type relationships. Newton's third law of motion states that for every force exerted on an object, there is an equal force exerted in the opposite direction on the object that generated the force. So the concept of a just world where good is always rewarded and bad is always punished is an idea. It is not the reality of our planet. What did we always tell our kids? Life isn't fair. So we live in this
Again, I hate the way that she like reacts, like she just like made a point. Like, look at her face.
Tell our kids, life isn't fair.
Where did that come from? Not a single person has made the opposite point. The point being made is that you were a bad mom. Is that the point you're making? Life isn't fair. You're going to get a bad mom, deal with it? Because that's stupid. The $55 hoodie grind set is so good, Bach. God. Yeah, life isn't fair is usually a garbage shutdown argument that never made any kid feel understood or loved. I'm sure she has a million of those. I'm sure she never like took her kids' feelings into consideration ever. At some point, as a parent, you have to start treating your children like they're people. I don't know when that is. I don't know. I have no idea. But I feel like it should happen at some point.
So we live in this unpredictable, messy, swirling world, and bad things do happen to good people simply because life is always moving with cause and effect continually clashing. And this is just something you have to accept about yourself, the world, your family, everything around us. Surrender to what is. The moment of surrender is not when life is over. It's when it begins.
Ew.
So in the 1950s, pilots were sent into the upper atmosphere to fly at altitudes higher than ever attempted. But to their horror, the usual laws of aerodynamics didn't apply, and they found themselves spinning and tumbling out of control. The more furiously they corrected, the wilder it became, with several of them plunging, unfortunately, to their deaths.
This is a really unnecessary way to say, like, steer into the skid. Like when you're driving on ice, you have to learn to apply this to any of your own life. Like, where did you do this, Diane? Where did you learn this? You're reading this off somewhere? You've not done any sort of like work towards becoming a smarter, better person. You've looked for ways to vindicate yourself. Again, I don't think you have to be a fantastic parent. I don't even think you have to be a good parent. But try not to be a bad one. There's no problem if I don't feel guilty is exactly how this is.
Until Chuck Yeager got knocked unconscious during one of these free falls, when for 7 miles, he did nothing. He came to when the plane hit denser atmosphere where normal methods worked, and he was able to steady the plane. What if, in the midst of the panic, we did nothing? What if we gave it up to God, the universe?
That part was stupid. What if you did nothing? What if you did nothing? What if when your daughter was like, hey, don't contact me, you did nothing? That would have been the right move. And why doesn't she add that context in? Why doesn't she say, if I had just listened to my daughter and done nothing, maybe we would have figured something out instead of pushing towards it and destroying the relationship?
Universe, and let the entire experience simply unfold without attachment. This is the sacred pause. So here are some tips for surrender, which are the key to acceptance, which is the key to healing. Number 1, embrace the present reality of estrangement, understanding that acceptance is a key step toward emotional freedom. Number 2, practice mindfulness and presence, focusing on the here and now in your body rather than dwelling on past regrets or future anxieties. Number 3, cultivate acceptance by letting go of resistance and embracing the current moment. Number 4, acknowledge your emotions related to the estrangement, allowing yourself to feel them fully without judgment.
Do you think that, that's why I've said nothing. She's just like saying nothing. Do you think that she made a point of not talking about her specific experience after her second daughter stopped talking to her? Like, she knows it's her fault, right? First one, all right. Second one, like, she has to know that she's the problem.
As a part of the acceptance process. Number 5, find peace in understanding that surrendering to the present does not equate to defeat, but rather it is a courageous step forward, facing truth and accepting reality. Transformation happens on the other side of surrender. Shifting perspective and reframing estrangement. Our key to transforming anything lies in our ability to reframe it. In bullfighting, there is an interesting parallel to the sacred pause as a place of refuge and renewal. It's believed that in the middle of a fight, a bull can find his own particular area of safety in the arena, and there he can reclaim his strength and power. This place and inner state are called his querencia, and as long as the bull remains enraged and reactionary, the matador is in charge. Yet when he finds his querencia, he gathers his strength and loses his fear. From the matador's perspective, at this point, the bull is truly dangerous, for he has tapped into his power.
Did she not know how these end? What does she think matador means? Matador. Wow. What a cool name. Wonder what that means.
So, this is how you tap into your power. Step 1, acknowledge your feelings. Start by recognizing and accepting your emotions related to your situation. Validate your feelings without judgment before attempting to shift your perspective. Step 2, identify the negative thought patterns. Take note of any recurring negative thoughts or narratives that you have about your situation. Challenge negative thought patterns about the estrangement and reframe them into more positive, empowering.
Okay, what she's saying is to think about your estrangement. The part where she goes, challenge the negative thoughts and reframe them is a really, really, really roundabout way to say, tell yourself it's not your fault and make it sound like it was something that was just supposed to happen or it's theirs. Oh, your child said you were a bad mom. They stopped talking to you. Your child must just misremember their childhood and have anger issues. Is that what you mean? You were a good mom. What is the things that she said? She was like, I fed it. I birthed it. I gave it a home. She kept saying it when speaking of her daughter. Maybe I didn't buy it the candy it wanted that one time. Again, she's a caricature. Like, she's just not a real person. There's no way there's people like this just exist. In private, maybe. But how are you this person in front of a camera on the internet, dude?
Perspectives. Number 3, challenge those perspectives.
Okay. I went to a therapist. She told me that I am the common denominator, so it's me who needs to change. How will they know I've changed? Even my husband is mad at me because he thinks it's my fault. Even my elderly dad has chosen not to speak to me because I don't see him enough. He thinks I should be verbally abused by him, as he's done all my life. I'm alone, I can't breathe. Okay, so you fell into a cycle of having an abusive dad who you don't want to speak to, and then put it onto your kids. You should block your dad. You should not speak to your dad. Yes, like, don't let yourself be verbally abused. But understand that, like, this part is probably your fault. We have to let go of them. If they don't want us in their lives, there's nothing we can do about it. Find new friends, new hobbies, and enjoy life as much as you can, because life is short and it's not worth it to be depressed about them. Don't let them ruin your life. You gave them life and love, and they're nothing but ungrateful brats, in my opinion. God bless all of you. I wish you much happiness and peace. The hurt will never go away, but we can still have a good life. I pray for all of you. God, people are just stupid.
Question the accuracy and helpfulness of your negative thoughts. Ask yourself if there are other ways to view the situation. Consider what you might tell a friend in a similar scenario.
Good advice, but missing the point. I say this a lot. You should speak to yourself the way you would speak to a friend. Because a lot of people, when criticizing themselves, are super negative. That's just kind of who you are sometimes. And sometimes you have to be. You should speak to yourself the way you would speak to your friends. But a good friend, a friend that you would hold accountable, In the same way that if I did something stupid, so it would be like, Max, that was stupid. And that's all that is. You should be honest with yourself and your friends, just not in a way that makes you mean.
Step 4, find the learning opportunities. Seek opportunities for growth within the estrangement, transforming pain into strength.
Again. All I need is just like significance, right? Learn. Tell us what you learned, Diane. Go ahead. What did you learn from pushing both of your children away?
How can this experience contribute to your growth and understanding of the world? Step 5, visualize a positive outcome. Shift your focus from what has gone wrong to what could go right. Imagine a future where this bad situation has led to growth, new opportunities, and more.
Listen, you can go explore nature and hiking and sleep in your car now without leaving anyone other than your husband behind, instead of, worrying about your children. So that's positive. More freedom. Yay. Yeah, don't have to worry about those darn kids. There's a dumb quote on Twitter, and it's something like, it's something like, when you don't have anyone to come home to, is that freedom or loneliness? It's something like that. And I think she's now just avoiding the fact that she's probably very lonely. She's in a house alone with her husband, who in every situation we've seen them together, they're fighting. That must suck. It must be really, really hard to be old and to be lonely. And if you came onto the internet sharing your story, admitting your faults, and looking for empathy, that would be incredibly understandable. I get it. I would, yeah. Yep. That's not what she's doing. She's proving to us all she's a bad person and giving other people a guidebook to ignore the mistakes that they've made. Anyway, sorry, I got distracted. What was I saying? Bad people. Good things bad things happen to good people. I hate listening to this woman talk. I don't know that I could ever see her in a positive light. I don't know even if she had come on here and been like, this is my situation, it was my fault, I don't think I can fix this, so I'm going to try and teach myself to move on. I don't think that I'd bother watching these videos because I wouldn't criticize her for that. That is part of being a person. But the fact that she can get on here and just be like, not my fault, that's when it sucks, dude.
Number 6, cultivate gratitude. Even in difficult times, there are things to be grateful for. Make a habit of identifying and appreciating these aspects of your life. Step 7, engage in constructive activities. Take proactive steps that align with a more positive perspective.
These are all just chapter titles. Like, she has said nothing. If you're going to pitch a book, if you're going to say you should read this book, you should be willing to analyze and somewhat summarize the reasons why we should read it. I imagine I go, oh, you should listen to the Eminem Show by Eminem. It's his best album. And then I went, Square Dance, White America, Sing for the Moment, Till I Collapse. If you don't know the music, that means nothing to you. Those are just song titles. That's all she's doing.
This might involve setting new goals, seeking support, or engaging in activities that boost your mood and outlook. And step 8, reflect and document your journey. Engage in self-reflection to understand how this experience can contribute to your personal development and resilience. Document your journey for further insights on how far you've come. And number 9, practice patience and persistence. Changing your perspective is a process that takes time. Be patient with yourself and persist in your efforts, even when it feels challenging. And number 10, share your experience. When you're ready, consider sharing your experience with others. Teaching can be a powerful way to solidify your own learning and can also help others through this pain.
So close. When you're ready, share your experience in order to teach them is probably what she thinks she's doing. But she's not sharing her experience. She's telling people what to do. And again, I think I've said this 4 times now in this video alone. If you can add context and add significance to the reason you say things, it is entirely different than to just say things. It is entirely different to say, I did this and it was a mistake. Don't do that. Than it is to say, do this. It is entirely different to say, let go of control, than it is to say, my daughter set boundaries with me, and instead of letting it happen and letting go of that control, I decided to just overwrite those boundaries and not at all listen to her, and it ruined our relationship. So you should avoid doing that as well. All you have to do is add in context, add in significance, tell me and tell everyone else why things matter, and give examples from your own life. You have them, but you refuse to take accountability. You refuse to make it sound like any of it is your fault, and so you won't share those. Instead, you'll just preach, which is all this is. You're preaching. You're telling people what to do when you yourself would not do that.
Change your lens, change your life. So here's your homework if you're serious about healing. Number 1, surrender. Surrender literally means to stop fighting. Stop fighting with yourself. Stop fighting the universe and the natural flow of things.
This is also, you have to recognize that this advice, very generic, but very much geared towards people who will not have a relationship with their kids again. So this is after you've already messed up to the point where you're never going to be able to fix it. And it's telling you to let go.
Stop resisting reality. Go to a quiet place, sit down, and immerse yourself in the sacred pause. So now that you know how to surrender, we're going to talk about letting go and living your best life with love.
In every video, she has a moment where she finds a couple of keywords. And it sounds like, in this one, it was sacred pause. It sounds like she wrote sacred pause at the top of her script, at the middle of her script, and at the bottom. And it just filled in the moments in between. Which, by the way, thank you all for those who helped me ratio her. I didn't expect it to happen right away. We ratioed her in less than 24 hours. So the last 2 videos have more views than both of her last 2 videos. Not to say that's any like real metric. I think I have a lot to say in these videos, and which is why I make them.